What is your most disturbing secret? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. When I was around 7 years old, I was sexually exploited and had my toddler photos sold to pedophiles by a maid we hired. One afternoon, right after taking a bath, I wanted to turn our PC on. But as a child, I was afraid of plugs due to the electricity, so I asked her kindly to plug it in for me. But the maid then told me I should first pose for a photo in the bed, otherwise she wouldn't do it. So I went to my bed and posed. I had a giant stuffed teddy bear at the time, so I covered my bare body because I somehow knew it was wrong. Then she told me to take the teddy bear off. She had also taken photos of my baby brother. The other maids carefully observed her and eventually told my parents. I watched her cry and beg on her knees, kissing my parents' foot. Explaining it was a joke as a kid, I honestly was laughing. The police further investigated and found out she had been making a fortune off of the photos she took of children she was hired to care for, including me. I've never told anyone, even on Reddit, because I'm afraid no one will listen, but here I am. Story 2. I have a good friend who is a very shy pooper. Like, we've been on trips together, and he won't days. He says he just can't relax and go because he's in public. But one time in college, about 6 years ago, he was super drunk and fell asleep on my toilet. And the got all over my toilet. Not sure how, but most of it did not go in the bowl. I got him up, cleaned him in the toilet up, and put him to bed. He was blackout drunk and doesn't remember it at all. I don't have the heart to tell him. He'd be mortified. It wouldn't do anyone any good. But when he's shy about pooping around me, I can't help but chuckle at the irony. Story 3. When I was a little kid, either 5 or 6 years old, I had gotten in trouble for throwing a TV remote at my sister. My dad is a very large and intimidating man. He stood in the doorway of my room yelling at me. I was hysterical. He was getting angrier and angrier. He started yelling at me to take my clothes off. I took my shirt off. He told me to take my pants off too, and my underwear. I'm in the corner of my room crying, hysterical, afraid, and naked, staring up at this giant, angry, red-faced man. I stood there like that for a moment, when suddenly his anger instantly left his face, making way for shame. He dropped to one knee in the doorway and put his head in his hands and cried to himself, saying, "What am I doing? I'm a bad father." I walked over to him, still naked and crying, and said, "You're not a bad dad." I hugged him. He left. I don't know if he thinks I forgot about that day or what, but I remember it vividly. This was over 30 years ago. We've never talked about it. Story 4. A few years ago, I used to work at Home Depot at the returns desk. It was mostly very elderly people who worked alongside me in our store. I was the youngest in the team. We had a lady, Margaret, who had issues with bowel control due to her medications. She used to fart without even realizing she's farting. Usually loud but harmless ones, even when she was having a normal conversation. So we got so used to her doing that, even though it was awkward in the beginning. One day we were having a team huddle, and it started to smell like fresh manure, such a strong stench. And then one more with a different flavor this time. The manager dismissed the team huddle, and one of the team members murmured, "My God, Margaret, what was that?" It was me. "I did that, Margaret, I'm sorry." Story 5. My husband passed away a few years ago. I tell everyone how much I loved him, and only talk about the good times we had, and how great he was. In honesty, I hated him for every bit of the 33 years we were together. He was so mean to me, both physically and mentally every single day. He hid it well, and in front of anyone he was okay to me, but when we were alone, he was terrible. I hated him so much I live alone now, and am just finding myself. I moved to a different state and have made new friends, and everyone seems to really like me, and I even like myself now too. It's been really hard to tell myself that I am okay. I have never said any of this out loud. I feel bad that I am happy he is gone. Story 6. Not a secret necessarily, but my labia tore in 2 spots near my clit when I gave birth to my son. I had him at home, and my son's dad is and was verbally, mentally, and emotionally abusive. I had no support or help, so the stitches didn't hold. I was 22 at the time and obviously self-conscious of my vagina already, as most women are. And my ex tormented me by telling me things like my pussy was mangled and ugly. I was in survival mode for so long. It wrecked my self-esteem. Edited to add, "Holy banana pancakes, you guys." I have tried many times to write it out, and I always end up deleting it. But today, for some reason, it just stuck to sharing. and the outpouring of love and support and kindness has been overwhelming, unexpected, and beyond appreciated. Story 7. I was abused mentally, physically, and sexually from the age of around 7 to 15 years old by one person, who I thought was my best friend during the time. I'm 23 now and just finally coming around to the realization of everything that happened and why I have so many mental health and trust issues now. And I'm talking about it in therapy finally. As far as I know, my abuser is living a comfortable, happy life. And the only person that knows about this is me and my therapist. Story 8. A newly discovered younger relative is trying to connect with my family after researching his background through an ancestry site. He tried to find us when his mom always avoided the topic of his biological dad. No one knew about this except recently from my parents, 2 of my older sisters, and me. Apparently, this was his second attempt to connect with my family, but was having a hard time thinking it's because of him coming out to them as gay. We tried to help him find his father and asked around about him to other family members. Found out this relative was known about from other close relatives, aunts, uncles, grandparents, etc., but was never mentioned because he was the result of rape by one of my uncles. They swept it under the rug to cover my uncle, never told the kid who his father was and what he did, and distanced themselves from him. We, on the other hand, do connect with him every once in a while and hang out with him. I don't know if anyone told him that we know who and where his father is, but we have confirmed that we probably have seen him a few times at family gatherings, but that's about it. Story 9. When my schizophrenia was first developing, it was a very hard time. I used to take off and take bike rides to try and clear the fog and whispers in my head, which rarely worked. While I rode, I listened to music. Eventually, it got so bad that I found myself playing roulette with the songs and walking the little wall over the canal. I decided that if one of the songs I had chosen came on when I hit shuffle, I would jump and run alive myself. They never did, and eventually I got help, and things have been going a bit better with the right medication. Sometimes, on really hard days, I still bring up that same playlist and just hit shuffle and cry. Story 10. When I was a lot younger, currently 22, more immature and a complete naive, I made fun of someone on social media because they got cancer. At least I've got a shot at redemption because I am currently in my final year of medical school, and I am, as of right now, doing a large-scale research work on new cancer treatment options for some of the most malignant and fatal cancers, right now working in the shadows. Plan on bringing it out into the academic and pharmaceutical realm when I am done with residency in histopathology and am fully organized to tackle the problems that comes after. Funny how life can work sometime. Story 11. About a year ago, my grandfather called me and wanted to talk. He was an old man and I don't like talking over the phone, so it always feels more like a chore than a thing I should do. I put it aside and didn't call him back, moved to the back of my brain. 3 days later, I got a call from my dad. He told me that my grandfather had passed away. I hadn't called him back. He's done everything he could to make sure me and my brother have a good life and a good future. He's always been so supportive. I never gave him the respect he deserved. I never understood his sacrifice. He didn't have a lot going on for him in the end, and hearing from me and my brother was a big part of his life. I didn't call him back that day, and I can't forgive myself for it. My entire family is pretty abusive except my cousin. My grandfather was a great man, and he was never abusive. I wish I had called him back. I should never have ignored him. He died a year ago when I was 13 in January. I'm now 14, almost 15, and I can't forgive myself, and I don't think I should. Story 12. For a full middle school year, I was groped by a former friend and classmate. He grabbed my waist during swim practice. I was wearing a tight one-piece. He was in swim trunks, and pulled me up against him. When I told him to stop, he said, "Stop what? I'm not touching you." I couldn't yell because the instructor was talking. I cried as I was swimming my next laps. That wasn't the first time he touched me, but it's the first one I remember. I threatened to report him to school admins if he kept it up, but I never reported him. It got to the point where I'd have to run to the school band room to hide from him, and he'd still try and chase me in. The next year, I found out he did the same to at least 3 other girls. I still see him around and he still tries to get close to me. I tried to kill myself when things with him got bad, and I lived in constant fear of him at school. I never told my mom. I didn't want her to see me any differently. To this day, only around 4 friends in real life know about this. Story 13. Sometimes, when I'm having a really bad mental health day, I imagine people that are annoying me in incredibly violent ways. I'd like to clarify that I'd never do it. I don't get to decide who lives or dies, and I certainly don't get to make that decision because I'm grumpy. But I've imagined customers being torn apart by machinery, stabbing someone to death with a biro, smashing into people who don't indicate, and feeding bad pet owners to wild animals. It's always oddly realistic in my head, like blood spatter patterns and the smell, etc. I used to be an undertaker working a coroner's contract. I know what I'm talking about. I reiterate, I'd never hurt anybody. I'm more likely to hurt myself than anybody else, if I hurt anyone at all, but for some reason it helps. Just picturing some arsehole who refuses to indicate at a roundabout being smashed across their steering wheel, the shattered bones, etc. No idea why it helps calm me down, but it does. Story 14. My youngest brother physically assaulted me because I was suspicious that he attempted suicide due to finding pills outside his bedroom. He beat me so viciously I had the worst concussion I've ever had. I had to go to the ER in secret because he and his boyfriend lied to my parents and the cops about what happened. The ER doctor told me I was lucky to be alive because I should have gone straight there after the assault. To this day, I still have a dent in my head from it. As a result, I ended up becoming homophobic towards him and his boyfriend despite being bisexual myself. I was so hateful towards them and called them slurs that I never imagined would come out of my own mouth. I denied it ever happening, but I still feel guilty about it 4 years later. It was the one thing I couldn't bring myself to admit to in therapy. Even if it was reactionary abuse, I'm still ashamed of it. Story 15. I shat myself at a wedding. I was 14, and I enjoyed occasionally eating this laxative called Lansoil. It's for kids. It tastes like raspberry jelly, and we were a household with no good snacks. Just ingredients and fruits and veggies. I would sometimes sneak 1-2 TSP of this jelly when I was feeling something sweet. No big deal. Well, one Saturday I was hungry and did my usual jelly treat, but I don't know why. I just didn't stop eating it that day. It was a Costco-sized jar. You need 1-2 TSP to help pass your bowels. I ate half the jar. We had a wedding that afternoon. A bit gross, sorry, but when I tell you, I wasn't even pushing. It was just coming out. We had to go home, and I didn't stop for a whole day. Mom threw out the Lansoil and never bought it again. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like more of this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below. I'll see you in the next video.